Hello everyone and welcome back to my KALDHEIM color review. So today we are doing black. We're gonna get started in black. We just finished the blue. Whoops. So now we're going to get started in black and we're gonna just dive right in because I talk a lot. Alright. Blood on the Snow. A snow sorcery for 6. This is quite a way to open up a color, huh? Choose one. Destroy all creatures, destroy all planeswalkers. Then return a creature or planeswalker card with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of snow spent to cast the spell. What? Converted mana cost X or less, huh? I don't think this is good. Honestly. I mean, it requires way too much to be good. First of all, to destroy a planeswalker for 6 is way too expensive. That's way too expensive. So you need to have, in order for that to be good, they need to have more than one planeswalker, because opponents usually don't have more than one planeswalker. They have one planeswalker at the end, usually. Sometimes you come across occasions where that's not the case, and they're playing like a planeswalker heavy deck. But usually it's just you're going to be killing one planeswalker with this, and then you're going to get a creature card back from the graveyard to the battlefield with a converted mana cost 6 or less. Which I suppose you need to have a reanimator deck. So would that be like Massacre Worm? Like best occasion would be you kill a planeswalker with this, you kill more than one planeswalker with this, you get a Massacre Worm out, and it kills all their creatures. That's like best case scenario for this. But that's like never happening, right? And then destroy all creatures and bring one creature card from the graveyard to the battlefields. Yeah. I mean, alright. It's just mediocre at best. Mediocre at best. It's just too expensive. You cast a card for 6, like, so rarely is there anything that costs 6 in any deck that I make. The format is just not slow enough. So I don't really see anybody playing. Unless you're specifically playing a reanimator deck. Like the Stitches deck that I just did. Alright, moving on. Bloodsky Berserker. A 1/1 human berserker for 2. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Bloodsky Berserker. It gains menace until the end of turn. Interesting. So now we're seeing this whenever you cast your second spell each turn crop up again. We haven't seen it since White, which means that this kind of interaction is Orzhov so far, which is weird. So human, so this is like a berserker, it gets 2 +1/+1 counters, so like that's good. This is pretty good when it comes to interaction. You would expect this to be only just 1 +1/+1 counter, but it gains 2 and menace, which is very strong. This is a very strong aggro card, and it's a human berserker, so I'm sure we're going to figure out how to make this work. Maybe Berserker is the thing. Berserker might very well be a thing. I just don't know. Speaking of which, next one, Burning Rune Demon. A 6/6 for 6 Demon Berserker. Flying. When Burning Rune Demon enters the battlefield, you may search your library for exactly 2 cards, not named Burning Rune Demon, that have different names. Well, okay. If you do, reveal those cards. An opponent chooses one of them, puts the chosen card into your hand, and the other into your graveyard, and shuffle your library. What? I don't see this ever being played. I don't see this ever being played. I mean, maybe if you had a reanimator deck, right? And you wanted both of those things to be in your graveyard, or having it in your graveyard didn't seem to bother you because you had an obsessive stitcher out or something like that. But it's a 6/6 flyer for 6, which is like not the end of the world. I mean, it's not bad is what I'm saying. It's not badly statted, but it's not good enough, I don't think, for you to want to spend 6 mana on this. I just don't see, and it's a mythic, like, I don't know. Not feeling that one, to be honest with you. Cleaving Reaper. It might have some jank potential, but other than that, meh. Cleaving Reaper, a 5/3 Angel Berserker for 5, flying, trample, pay 3 life, return Cleaving Reaper from your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only if you had an Angel or Berserker enter the battlefield under your control this turn. That's interesting. That is very interesting. It's a bit expensive, but it does have trample, which is interesting for an angel. Angels usually don't have trample. And it's a berserker. So if berserker does end up being a thing, then this would be a good card for that deck for sure. I don't know. Something to look into, I think. I can't make a decision on whether this is good or bad. It's not very well statted, but it is. But like I said, it has flying and trample. So even if it does die, it has a way of getting it. You have a way of getting it back, and it will probably deal damage of some sort. It won't just die straight out to anything, or it'll trample over something that kills it, even though it has like a little butt. Anyway, crippling fear. Choose a creature type. Creatures that aren't of that chosen type get -3/-3 until end turn. Whoa! So this is like a nega witch's curse. The nega witch's curse. Okay, that's interesting. So yeah, if you are playing a black tribal deck, this is what you want. Oh my god, rogues. Okay. So rogues likes this card. Very much so. Oh god. Makes me sick. Okay. Deathnell Berserker, a 2/2 elf berserker for 2. When Deathnell Berserker dies, if its power was 3 or greater, create a 2/2 black zombie berserker creature token. Interesting. I'm not exactly sure how black makes that happen. Like, unholy strength. I mean, there are unholy strength versions in standard right now, so possible. Like right here, demonic gifts. This is bad, by the way. I don't think this is very good. I mean, maybe. Okay, so like if Berserker is a deck, if you can make a Berserker deck, then this is not bad. Because the zombie that comes into play is also a Berserker, which means if there are like more Berserker triggers like the other Angel Berserker, then that's another Berserker trigger. But this just seems too specific. Like, it's a very vanilla card. Like, it's a bear that can create another bear when it dies if you're nice to it. Sounds like a bit too much work for bears. Demonic gifts. Until the end of turn, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains when this creature dies. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Well, there you go. Perfect. That is the perfect accompaniment to Deathnell Berserker. Because Deathnell Berserker comes back. And then you also have, so then you have like 2 bears. That's great. I don't know if it's good, but it's a thing that you can do. As for the card itself, that does seem pretty strong. If it's a good combat trick, and if you have triggers like the priest, the 1-drop cleric that creates a 5/5 demon, right? When it comes back into the battlefield, you cast demonic gifts on top of that dude, and then you have a 5/5 and on the battlefield. Like, definitely has its place. That card definitely has its place. And by the way, when I say bear, I mean a 2/2 for 2 is a bear. Because back in the original Magic the Gathering, the very first set that ever came out, there was a bear. And that's all it did. It was a vanilla bear. It didn't have any fancy text, which most of the cards did not have any text back in those days. It was just a 2/2 for 2 mana. Anyway. Dogged Pursuit, an enchantment for 4. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Oh, so this is like that taxes card? Taxes. Ill-gotten inheritance. This is ill-gotten inheritance come back again. And I am perfectly happy to see this. You could copy this. So okay. So like you have that changeling octopus guy. Right? This one. Whenever you cast an instance or sorcery spell, if it targets one or more other permanents you control, create a token that's a copy of that permanent. So you have this out, and you have that guy out, and then you cast the Mythos of Illuna on this, which copies it. Then that basically makes 2 copies of this. So then you have 3 copies of Dogged Pursuit out. I'm not saying it would be a good deck, but it's definitely a janky deck. And I like, I've made decks with Ill-Gotten Inheritance, which was basically the same exact thing as this. And I really do enjoy those interactions. So there. All right, Jogger Necromancer. A 4/4 zombie cleric or snow zombie cleric for 4. If a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, exile that card with an ice counter on it instead. You may cast spells from among cards in exile your opponents own with ice counters on them, and you may spend mana from snow sources as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. Cool. Super duper cool. I like that card a lot. So we have established from our blue review. Sorry, the sun is creeping. So I'm sorry, I'm gonna get dark a little bit until like the sun goes back behind the clouds. So we've already established for our last review, our blue review, that if you make a snow deck, there is a good snow deck to be had with blue. This is probably the best snow card we've seen so far, and it's black. So maybe snow is Dimir, or partially Dimir. We're gonna have all the pathways, so it's gonna be possible to make more three-color decks now. So we'll have to keep our eye open for all the snow stuff and see what colors it's probably gonna be. But that's a good card. Draugr Recruiter, a 3/3 zombie cleric for 4. So Boast for 4. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Nope, not good enough. That is way too expensive. You don't. If it was return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, that would be obviously way better. And that would probably be worthy of playing. But as it is right now, absolutely not. I don't think. Personally, I do not think so. Draugr's Helm, a artifact for 2. When Draugr's Helm enters the battlefield, you may pay 3. If you do, create a 2/2 black zombie berserker creature token. And then, yeah, okay. So this is like the shield, or I'm sorry, the sword, the angel sword, and the ogre, or I'm sorry, the giant necklace or whatever. So equip creature gets +2/+2 and has menace, and then equip 4. Ouch. That is way too expensive an equipment cost. I don't think this is good. You won't be seeing this one. You won't be seeing this one, even in enchant or artifact decks. I'm sorry, equipment decks. You won't see it. All right, Dreadwriter. 3/7. 3/7 Spirit Knight for 6. Wow, it's a big boy. 2 and tap, exile a creature card from your graveyard. Target opponent loses 3 life. Nope. No way. That is way too expensive. It's very oddly statted. And you have to exile a creature card from your graveyard to make your opponent lose 3 life? Ugh. I don't like that at all. Probably good in standard, though. I'm sorry, not standard, limited. All right, Dream Devourer. A 0/3 demon cleric for 2. Interesting. Each non-land card in your hand without foretell has foretell. Its foretell cost is equal to its mana cost reduced by 2. When you foretell a card, Dream Devourer gets +2/+0 until end of turn. This seems bad. Is this bad? This seems bad. Like, we haven't seen any black foretell cards, so this doesn't seem to work well with foretell's synergies. It's not really reducing the cost of any card, because you just pay for the foretell cost up front. Then your opponent knows what you're going to be casting next turn. So it just allows you to invest in a card. And then it gets +2/+0 until end of turn when you foretell a card. So I guess the question needs to be asked of, when is foretelling? What is that like? Is the foretelling when you invest in the card and you put it into exile? Or is foretelling when you cast the card from exile for its foretell cost? And I think it's the second one. I might be wrong. I haven't done research on that. And I really should, because I should know this for you. I think it's when it comes out. So when you bring out a card that you have put away, you foretell it. That's its foretell cost. Yeah. Then it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So it becomes a 2/3. Like, this just seems bad. It's interesting. It's interesting that you could make anything a foretell card, but why, like, what's the point of that? you would need to have a particular strategy that revolved around that, because just getting +2/+0 on this creature as being the only synergy for Foretell is definitely not good enough. So, yeah. I mean, it could help you. So I was complaining about how expensive some stuff is, right? So like the blood on the ice or whatever the heck it's called, blood on the snow is too expensive. So this would make it not too expensive. But even if you were to do that, like blood on the snow specifically is how much snow you spent on that. So that means the converted mana cost that you're going to get back from the graveyard can only be 4, right? Because you're only using 4 mana for the Foretell cost. I mean, that's a very specific interaction, but I don't, we'll have to see if there's more like Foretell stuff in black, but from what I have seen, I've gone through some of this stuff before, as you know, the cards were being spoiled, and I didn't see anything Foretell in black. So unless there's something that I haven't seen yet that makes this good, this is not good. This is bad. This is, from what I can tell anyway. Maybe I'll be like terribly wrong, and this is like a really good card and has like this niche place that makes a really good deck. That makes, yeah, I just, not good from what I can see. All right, enough of that. Duskwielder, a 1/2 elf berserker for 1. Boast 1. Target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. It's a berserker for 1. It's also an elf for 1, and I'm pretty sure that elves are going to be black and green. But I don't think you're going to be attacking with this ever. So I don't think this boast is very good. If it had Death Touch, then yeah, that would be better, obviously. Everything's better with Death Touch, but yeah, it's not very good. A filler card, if anything. Aegon, God of Death. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile 2 cards from your graveyard. If you can't, sacrifice Aegon and draw a card. So this is a 6/6 God for 2. I'm sorry, for 3, but still, that's, you know, insane. Death Touch, you don't need, this card does not need Death Touch. Like I was just saying that everything's better with Death Touch. And I'm not saying that it's not better or it would be worse without Death Touch. It would be worse, but it's a 6/6 for 3. Like you don't need Death Touch on this. Menace maybe, but maybe that would be too strong. As for this ability, or this, you have to exile 2 cards from your graveyard. So this goes into like Rakdos mill, self-mill, right? Like Kroxa stuff. But this works against Kroxa pretty specifically, so I'm not sure if this would even be good for that. I mean, it's kind of like an aggro card. It's a 6/6 for 3. That's a problem, but it requires so much to like to fuel it. So I don't know how good it's gonna be. Throne of Death. Okay, a 1 legendary artifact for 1. At the beginning of your upkeep, mill a card. Exile a creature card from your graveyard, draw a card. Okay. Okay. Like, this is okay. Like, I think if you wanted to, you could put it into that Rakdos self-mill stuff. And that's probably the only place it would belong. But it could be scary there. If you can keep this fueled and just have a 6/6 Death Toucher on turn 3 until you kill your opponent, that's very powerful. But requires a lot of resources. The kind of resources that as a Rakdos deck you don't want to give up. Right? Creatures in your graveyard. Or anything in your graveyard, you know? You want to escape a Kroxa. And I think Kroxa is better than this. You know? Yeah. Alright. Elder Fang Disciple. A 1/1 elf cleric for 2. When Elder Fang Disciple enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. It's a rat. Huh. That's cool. I'm happy to see this card back. Even though it is an elf cleric this time around. You know, reanimated as an elf cleric. Reincarnated, I should say. Yeah. I think it's probably not gonna see much play, if any, but this card is fun. And we might play with it. Alright. What do we got? Elder Fang Ritualist, a 3/1 elf cleric for 3. When Elder Fang Ritualist dies, return another target elf card from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, that's cool. That is good, I think. It's very weak, which is unfortunate. It dies to a spike field hazard and does not trigger if that happens, because it's only when Elder Fang Ritualist dies and spike field hazard exiles instead of killing something. So that's a weakness for sure. But if you have like a really cool elf deck, this might make its way in there. More so than some of the other like dirtily elves that we've seen. Just because it can get back some of the really powerful elves. Eradicator Valkyrie, a 4/3 Angel Berserker for 4. All of the black angels have been Berserkers. Flying lifelink hexproof from Planeswalkers. Okay. In Boast 2, sacrifice a creature. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or Planeswalker. Interesting. Okay. I think it's okay. I mean, is it my first pick in a Berserker deck? No. Is it my first pick in an Angel deck? No. Is it my second pick? Probably more like my third or fourth. No, it's probably even further down than that. This requires some extra play, honestly. Sacrifice a creature. So this needs to be worked around the ability to sacrifice your own creatures. But I think that's possible. You could definitely build a deck that is an Angel or Berserker deck, or both, that also enjoys sacrificing your own creatures. I think this probably has a place. Not in every deck, but in some, for sure. All right, feed the serpent. Exile target creature or planeswalker. Very simple. Fine. This is fine and we'll probably see play. Maybe. I think it will. I think this... The only reason I'm kind of like waffling back and forth here on that is it's expensive. Ugh. It's expensive. All right. It's 4 to exile target creature or planeswalker. I guess in some cases exiling is what you really need, but you're not going to build a deck around needing to exile over destroying, and destroying stuff is way cheaper. So I don't think somebody would take this card over something that just destroys, like Murderous Rider, or, you know, there's plenty for 2 that do what this does. Just doesn't exile them, it destroys them and has conditions, but still. So maybe not. Maybe you won't see this. Grim Draugr, a 3/2 zombie berserker for 3, and for 2 it gets +1/+0 and gains menace until end of turn. Or whatever. A very whatever card. Hailstorm Valkyrie, a 2/2 angel wizard, snow angel wizard. Interesting. Flying trample, and it gets +2/+2 for until end of turn for 2 snow. Very interesting. Maybe. This might, like, if snow ends up being Dimir, which it might, then this might have a spot. I'm not even sure. It's very expensive. But you can pump it for not too much. And it's flying trample, which is significant. I don't think so. It dies to removal way too easily. Yeah. I do like this card for a lot of its different pieces, but I still think it's poorly statted for its cost. If it was 3, it was a 3-drop instead of a 4-drop, then that would make it more viable. I mean, of course, like, it's just one of the things that you can do to make a card better is reduce the converted mana cost, but I think that's the difference between it being unplayable and playable. All right. Haunting Voyage, a sorcery for 6. Here's one of the things that we can foretell. Oh wait, it's got foretell on it. Look at that. Wait, the foretell is more expensive? Choose a creature type. Return up to 2 creature cards of that type from your graveyard to the battlefield. If this spell was foretold, return all creature cards of that type from the graveyard to the battlefield instead. Huh. So if you have the demon out, does that reduce this foretell cost? It does, doesn't it? And this is a demon cleric. So maybe you could have a cleric deck. An Orzhov cleric deck that works around Haunting Voyage and killing your own stuff. Like maybe with that angel that we were talking about? Or was that angel? Eradicator Valkyrie. With Haunting Voyage. This demon cleric. All the other clerics that deal with the graveyard as well, like Aura. You would have to have a lot of stuff in your graveyard to make this good. But you could probably do that. It's in the right color. That's interesting. That is very interesting. I will definitely keep my eye on this card. Okay. Infernal Pet, a 2/2 imp for 3. Look at that cute little imp. It's like eating a fairy. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Infernal Pet, and it gains flying until the end of turn. That's cute. That's cute. I like it. It's not very good, obviously, but you know, it's cute. Jarl of the Forsaken, a 3/2 zombie cleric for 4. Flash, when Jarl of the Forsaken enters the battlefield, destroy target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls that was dealt damage this turn. Okay. Foretell for 2. Interesting. That is interesting. It's not very good, but it is definitely interesting. Especially if you had a way to like ping something. And you could foretell it for a very cheap amount. So I do like it. It's gonna be something I probably use at some point. But it's got a very specific role to play. Alright, Carfield Kennel Master. 4/4 zombie berserker for 5. When Carfield Kennel Master enters the battlefield, up to 2 target creatures each get +1/+0 and gain indestructible until end of turn. That's cool. It's very expensive. I don't think that it's playable because of how expensive it is, but it does do cool things. Excellent, awesome, limited card, I think. This is probably one of the best commons that I've seen it for limited playable. Like, this is just a late game, like, bomb to a degree. Obviously depending on, like, what your other creatures are and what your opponent's creatures are, but this could be very good and limited. Alright, Koma's Faithful. A 3/1 elf cleric for 3. Lifelink, when Koma's Faithful dies, each player mills 3 cards. Poison the Cup. Destroy target creature. If this spell was foretold, scry 2. Interesting. I think probably only in foretell decks? Oh, this actually seems pretty good. I mean, you're basically paying 4 to kill something and scry 2. Or 3 to kill something. But 3 is usually the amount that you pay to just kill something anyway. Like straight out without any conditions. You can kill something for 2 or 1, but there's conditions, right? Like that Bloodchief one. You can kill something for 1, but it has to be converted mana cost 2 or less, right? This you can kill anything for 3, and that's usually the sweet spot for that kind of spell. And then you can foretell it 4 altogether, but 2 at that turn that you're foretelling it. And you can just save it away for later. You can like invest it for like later, which is just so cool. Like I really like foretell. Every time I think about it, I'm just like, it's so cool. And then you get bonuses for foretelling, like return on investment. I think this is a good card. I only worry that it might be too expensive for most meta decks, because most meta decks don't play the 3 converted mana cost kill something spells, right? They just play with the 2 ones that have conditions. So I don't know if it's competitive enough for that, but it might be. It might be. I'll have to play with it and see how bad it is, or good it is, I suppose I should say. Alright, Priest of Haunted Edge, a 0/4 zombie cleric for 2. Tap, sacrifice Priest of the Haunted Edge. The target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the number of snowlands you control. Activate this ability only anytime you cast a sorcery. Wow. This is a common? Sacrifice Priest. Oh, because you're sacrificing it. Sorry. Yes. Okay. That makes way more sense. Okay, for some reason I thought it was just like tap and do this thing. I'm starting to get tired. I've been reviewing for like almost 3 hours straight. Maybe more like an hour. But that's still a lot. That's a lot of talking and thinking. I talk and think a lot. That's not hard for me to do it for just an hour and a half straight. All right, anyway. So this is okay. So like this probably, if snow is Dimir, this probably belongs in the snow deck, right? Because this is just sacrifice this creature to kill anything. And then in the meantime, it's a very good blocker. So I think it's fine. It is a little unfortunate that you have to sacrifice it, but maybe there's snow stuff that can get around that. Reanimate this guy or bring it back, or something good happens if creatures die or something like that. Anyway, it is a cleric, so maybe it could fit into like that cleric deck that we were talking about earlier. Alright, choose one. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, or return 2 target creature cards that share a creature type from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, Rise of the Jogger. An instant for 2. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's like a Dance in the Macabre or whatever. There was a deck a couple sets ago that did something like this, but it didn't require them to share a creature type. It was just return these creatures to your hand. But I think that's probably fine. There's enough tribal stuff going on here where that will be relevant. I'm not quite sure how many people want to play a card like this. Usually you just want cards that do things. This card doesn't really do anything. It doesn't affect the battlefield. It is an instant though, right? So you could cast it when you didn't have anything else to do. And if you have like graveyard interaction, then that's fine. So it's got its place for sure. Renegade Reaper, a 2/3 Angel Berserker for 3. So all of the Black Angels are Berserkers too. Flying, when Renegade Reaper enters the battlefield, mill 4 cards. If at least one angel card is milled this way, you gain 4 life. It's pretty cheap for an angel, honestly. Most angels are way more expensive than that. So while it doesn't, I mean, you have to make this work, right? So maybe the Berserker deck wants graveyard interaction. I mean, that's what it seems like. But that's pretty good to mill yourself 4 and actually get some benefit from it if you mill another angel. And there was a white angel that when you gain 4 life. Yeah, I still think that card's too bad though. It costs too much. It's just bad. All right. So maybe we'll see about these Reapers, about these Berserkers. Return upon the tide. Return target's creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. If it's an elf, create 2 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens. All right. Elf Tribal Reanimation. Foretell for 4. That's pretty bad. The Foretell altogether is more expensive than what the card would be if you just kept it in your hand and cast it all at once. Paid the casting cost all at once. And it is a sorcery on top of that. So I don't know why you would want to foretell this. Unless you literally wanted to cast it before turn 5. Or didn't have the mana. Which I suppose might be a problem in an elf deck. Elf decks have low converted mana costs, so you don't want to play 24 lands maybe? Or 25 lands in that deck. So maybe you would foretell it? Only good in an elf deck. Only good in an elf deck. And I don't even know if it would be good then, honestly. Rise of the Dreadmarn. Alright. An instant. Create X 2/2 black zombie berserker tokens, where X is the number of token creatures, non-token creatures that died this turn. Foretell for 1 black. Whoa. Okay. Wow, berserkers really want to die, huh? Maybe that's just the thing. So the Berserker deck so far is mono black. And it just has graveyard shenanigans. You just want them to die and churn as much as possible. That seems like a deck to me, honestly, from what I've seen so far. And Rise of the Dreadmarn is definitely going to go in there. Very interesting card. Very interesting card. Rune of Mortality. Okay, so here's the black rune. Excellent. Enchant permanent. When Rune of Mortality enters the battlefield, draw a card. As long as enchanted permanent is a creature, has Death Touch. Okay. And if it's equipment, the equipped creature has Death Touch. That's good. Death Touch is probably the better of the runes. Flying's not bad. Flying is pretty good. But Death Touch just, like, makes sure that you are killing something. And there are, just to be able to like enchant something to have death touch on it, I don't think there are any like pingers so far. We haven't seen any pingers. No Timmies. Which could benefit from this. But if you put it on an equipment, or a vehicle wouldn't count. If you put it on equipment though, that's pretty decent. If you had a very cheap equipment, like a short sword, and you put this on the short sword, then you would just have like death touch on any creature you wanted. That didn't go away, which is like pretty decent. That's not bad. That's probably one of the better runes. Skemfar Avenger, a 3/1 elf berserker. Whenever another, or for 2, whenever another non-token elf or berserker you control dies, you draw a card and you lose a life. Damn. Okay, so berserker definitely is a thing, and they definitely want to die. Like this is gonna make berserkers good. This is such a good card. This is that knight, the knight that allowed you to draw a card whenever a creature died. So very strong, excuse me. Especially since it seems that your berserkers want to die, so they're going to be dying a lot, and some of them seem really cheap. Oof. Berserkers might be scary. We'll see. Skemfar Shadow Sage. That's actually a cool name. Skemfar Shadow Sage. A 2/5 elf cleric for 4. When Skemfar Shadow Sage enters the battlefield, choose one. Each opponent loses X life, where X is the greatest number of creatures you control that have a creature type in common. You gain X life where X... Okay, sure. So this is a tribal lose a life or gain a life elf cleric. This would go in a cleric deck or an elf deck, and I don't think it belongs in either of them. Fortunately. This was a berserker. Nah. Not even. I don't think it's good enough. It's too expensive. Wouldn't be a bad finisher if you had like a ton of elves or whatever, which is probably the only way that it would work. If you, well, I guess if you're gaining life, because the clerics also deal with like gaining life, but it's too expensive for that. It's too expensive for just mediocre life gain. You would want to use this offensively, and it would want to be like a closer. You have like a bunch of elves out, you slam this girl down, and you kill your opponent. Yeah. Skull Raid. Target opponent, a sorcery for 4. Target opponent discards 2 cards. If fewer than 2 cards were discarded this way, you draw cards equal to the difference. That's cool. Foretell for 2. So the foretelling is just, you know, an investment, which is fine. But I like the clause there where you draw cards equal to the difference if your opponent doesn't have 2 cards to discard. That's cool to me, because then this is like, if this is it. So, okay, I like discard decks. Discard decks have a problem where if all of your opponent's cards are discarded, then you have no benefit. All of your discard cards are now useless. This card's different. This card allows you to gain benefit from your opponent not having any cards in their hand, even if you're playing a discard deck, which is cool. I like that a lot. Maybe we'll build another discard deck when KALDHEIM comes out. Turgid, God of Fright. All right, so another god. 4/5 god for 5 menace. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. What? Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card into the battlefield under your control. That is bonkers. That is bonkers. Oh, I'm sorry. You got that Elspeth Conquers Death over there? Oh, you have to sacrifice it this turn. Yeah. And that creature that you just brought back, or that planeswalker that you just brought back, I'm gonna get rid of them with the Elspeth Conquers Death that you just gave me because you sacrificed it. And then like the angel that makes other people sacrifice creatures, it's the boast one, right? So you attack with an angel, you boast, you sacrifice your creature. They have to sacrifice a creature and you get it. Thanks, I'll take that. That's great. Doom Foretold? Doom Foretold with this card? I mean, she's expensive, but But that's insane. Oh man. Oh man. That's the danger zone. That's the danger zone. Okay, Turgid's Lantern. Legendary artifact for 4. Target player loses 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. Untap the lantern. This card seems really strong to me. This card seems really strong to me, and I'm playing 4 of these. When I make a deck with Turgid, Turgid, I'm playing 4 of them. And that's one of the nice things about these gods that I haven't mentioned before. You play 4 of these if you really want one, right? Because if you don't want to play the god part, because it's legendary and you have one out already, you can just play the other part. The artifact part. Oh my gosh. Whew, this card. Card's good. Let's see the other artwork. Let's compare. I like this one better, honestly. Alright, moving on. Good gracious. Turgid's Shadow, an instant for 5. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. And foretell for 4. Oh, okay. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. I suppose that's just okay, right? But if you have a Turgid out, then like you get those 2 creatures that they just sacrifice. Turgid seems stupid to me. Thorn Mantle Striker, a 4/3 elf rogue for 5. When Thorn Mantle Striker enters the battlefield, choose 1. Remove X counters from target permanent, where X is the number of elves you control. Target creature an opponent controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of elves you control. That's fine. I don't even know if you'd play it in an elf deck, because it's so expensive. Right now, you don't really want to be playing cards that are 5 or 6 mana unless they will win you the game. Like, you got to think about what you can do with 5 mana. And I've mentioned Elspeth Conquers Death in this review series like a lot, because that's kind of a really good example of what you can do for 5 mana and what you can just do in general as a permanent. Like, Elspeth Conquers Death does so much for you. Way more than this does. Like, I suppose, well, maybe, okay, so let me level a little bit better. This will give you a 4/3 and might kill something, right? Which is kind of what Elspeth Conquers Death does. You just have more to choose from than just a vanilla 4/3, right? When you have Elspeth Conquers Death, you might have your choice of a lot of good stuff from graveyards, from your graveyard. You know, you can bring back a Dream Trawler, which is way better than this. And you can exile almost everything. You can't exile anything, everything. But this guy requires you to have a bunch of elves out in order to... I'm sorry, the sun is creeping again. In order to kill something, it has a condition that you have to have a bunch of elves out. Elspeth Conquers Death has a way easier condition. The condition is just the converted mana cost has to be 3 or more. Which stinks if what you're trying to kill is just 2. But I think it's easier to kill things with Elspeth Conquers Death, and it exiles them. It removes them from play entirely. So that's what I'm saying when I'm trying to say, like, the amount of what is required in order to make this card work, on top of the creature that it's attached to and its stats versus converted mana cost, is just not good enough to make it worthy of play. Even in its best case scenario deck, which is an elf deck. So that's my explanation beyond that. Goodness, the sun is killing me! I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to deal with it. Okay. I do not have blinds for this window that the sun is coming through, and if you could see the contraption that I have made to try and block the sun, it's impressive, but it's also very fragile. It's like a Jenga, it's like a Jenga tower, so I just have to hope that the sun is gonna go away, and until then, unfortunately, you have to deal with it. It's not that bad, it's just making me dark, and this section over here kind of bad, but hopefully the sun goes away. All right, Valky, God of Lies. When Valky enters the battlefield, I'm sorry, a 2/1 god for 2, okay? When Valky enters the battlefield, each opponent reveals their hand. For each opponent, exile a creature card they revealed this way until Valky leaves battlefield. X, choose a creature card exiled with Valky with the converted mana cost X. Valky becomes a copy of that card. Cool. Pretty interesting. Yeah, so you have to pay the converted mana cost? Okay. Tybalt! There he is! Everyone's... The memeest of planeswalkers. Tybalt, Cosmic Imposter. For 7. That is a lot. As Tybalt enters the battlefield, you get an emblem with... You may play cards exiled with Tybalt, Cosmic Imposter, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those cards. Exile the top card of each player's library. Exile target artifact or creature. Exile all cards from all graveyards and add 3 red mana. I mean, you're probably never casting this part of the card, but God of Lies isn't bad. God of Lies is actually pretty good. I mean, it's only good if you're playing against somebody who has creatures in their deck. So that's a condition, which stinks, but it's very well costed, right? It's a 2/1 for 2, so you can get them out really early, and you can steal stuff from their hands. So it does, but it has to be creature, right? For each opponent reveals their hand. For each opponent, exile a creature card. So it has to be a creature card. So you can't just cast this, and if they don't have any creature cards in their hand, you can just take something else. This is you get a creature or you whiff. And then that creature has to be decent enough for you to want to change Valky into that creature. But the cool thing is that it can shapeshift, right? So choose a creature card exiled, and it becomes a copy of that card, right? So it can switch back and forth between all of the different creatures that it has exiled. So if you're playing with a group of people, like maybe this isn't very good on Arena or something like that, but if you're playing with 4 of your friends, then Valky could be super fun. So I do like it. Man, look at that ugly mug. Valky is not a pretty boy. I think I like this artwork the best out of all 3 of them. All right. Varigoth, Bloodsky Sire, a 2/3 demon rogue for 3. Death Touch, Boast. When player searches their library for a card, then target player searches their library for a card and then shuffles their library and puts that card on top of it. Cool. Cool. This will probably see play. I'm not 100% sure what deck it would go into. Man, look at that metal. Look at how freaking metal this card is. Very cool. I love that art. This will definitely see play. I'm not sure where. Maybe Rogue's deck. Maybe. But it is cool. I like it a lot. Death Touch, so if it gets blocked by anything, the cool thing about Boast is that you can boast even just when it attacks, right? So even though it might die, so you could get something with it after attacking, and then if they decide to block so that it can't do it again, if your opponent decides to block this creature so that this creature cannot boast again, then they have to lose something in order to do that. So that's cool. This is a good card. I don't know where it best belongs, but it could belong in many places. All right, Vengeful Reaper, a 2/3 Angel Cleric for 4. Flying, Death Touch, Haste, Foretell. Ooh. Another Angel, but it's not a Berserker. Oh, that's too bad. It's a Cleric. It's not a bad Angel. It's a filler Angel. Definitely a filler Angel, but with Foretell, it's peace, and it's Death Touch and Haste. Pretty good. All right, Village Rites. Everybody loves Village Rites. Me too. Good card. Glad to see it coming back. I mean, it's currently in Standard, isn't it? Did this rotate out of Standard? Well, whatever. It's back again. I like the art too. Very good. Very cool. Way Down. As an additional cost to cast this spell, exile a creature card from your graveyard. Target creature gets -3/-3 until end turn. No, not very good. I mean, we have plenty of cards that do this that don't require you to exile a creature card from your graveyard. I think I'd rather pay an extra mana to do what's the one? There's one that does exactly this, but it's 2 instead of 1, and you don't have to exile a creature card or a yeah, a creature card. You have to exile a creature card from your graveyard specifically. This is not good. I do like the art though. Very cool. Wither Crown, an enchantment for 2 aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature has base power of 0 and has, at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life unless you sacrifice this creature. Very roundabout removal. Unless you're playing enchantments and something that triggers enchantments, constellations. You know, if you're not playing constellations, then you're not playing this card. All right, and that's it. That is it for black. Ooh, that was another really good color. So far, blue is still the one I'm most excited about, but black's got some really cool stuff going on. White is the one that I have been least excited for so far. But there's still a lot of good stuff in white. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it didn't excite me, but I didn't have any like, oh my goodness moments in white like I did in black and blue. All right, very, very cool. I'm looking forward to going through the rest of it. Red is next, so stay tuned. And thank you for joining in, and I'll see you next time. Until then, good luck in all of your games. Ciao.